Okay, so let's not forget, we've got test 3 on Friday, it's the take-home portion on Wednesday. The stuff we're gonna talk about today is not on that test, it's on test 4. Everything from here on out is test 4 material. And that's just what we want to start to begin to look at now. It's kind of some of the public policy stuff. We're going to start off by kind of looking at stadiums. It's an interesting issue. It's one that continues to grow. I'm starting to wonder if people have maybe turned the corner on this. And maybe some people are starting to say maybe some of these things are not worth it. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But let's kind of look at these stadiums. We're going to divide up our times to stadiums. Three different eras. All right, so our first era, kind of basically the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Stadiums that actually have the name stadium in them. They have things like Forbes Field, Wrigley Field, Park. So you kind of have some of this pastoral origins of baseball and football. You have a bunch of guys playing out in the middle of the field somewhere. And the only reason that stadiums are even erected in the first place, right, these guys are playing out in the middle of the field. Stadiums were erected basically to keep people who weren't paying from watching the game. And you can imagine that someone who's out in the middle of the field playing. Some people are paying to watch. Well, if you're in the field and there's no stadium around you, all you gotta do is just walk up and start watching. So that's keep out the free. Got our second era here. We've got some aging facilities. Growing prosperity. So here you're getting to the point where cities are starting to pay for stadiums. So we have things like Three Rivers Stadium. We have the LA Coliseum. You have Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. This third era is kind of the one that we're in now, where we have things like naming rights. We have stadiums built by cities. They auction off the right to play. Or vice versa. The stadium is built by private people, with public dollars. And of course, this public dollars can change the amount. They could be paying 10%, or they can be either paying 50% or 100% or whatever. They can be all kinds. So there's all kinds of different questions, right? I mean, basically, you kind of have you can kind of ask yourself, I mean, should this occur? You can say, should cities be helping team owners build their stadiums? And if so, how much should they be paying? If not, why do they do it in the first place? I mean, there's all kinds of different questions like this. And to see that this is a legitimate question, should cities help build the local Subway restaurants or the local McDonald's? Do they help finance the McDonald's or the Opera House? Or the local CPA? The local CPA wants to build a place. Do they help finance that? He brings in jobs too. So why do we have this kind of stuff that's occurring? Right? And if the answer was clean cut, it was clear that the answer is X, Y, and Z, I mean, you wouldn't have any questions about this. So we've got a couple of broad arguments here against it. Stadium money can be better spent on other things. You're taking tax dollars and you're using them to build a stadium for the Dallas Cowboys. Those are dollars that could be better spent someplace else, whatever that something else is. And that's true as long as people would be willing to pay those dollars for those other things, education or police or whatever. Another argument here is that the stadium subsidies goes to billionaire owners and millionaire players. So that in essence what you have, if you're an average taxpayer, making up a number, makes $70,000, and they're paying these taxes, and it's going to subsidize a guy that's already a billionaire or a player that's a millionaire. In essence, what you have is you've got poor people buying things for rich people. So you have the poor people subsidizing rich. You can also say, if the stadium is so important, let the owner build it. Switch blacks here. Switch to a different one. Let's get that a little. Same thing, the same argument that they make for the accountants and lawyers and the local Subway restaurant and McDonald's restaurant and Jim's Steakhouse and Susie Q's Knick-Knack store and everything else. They're not getting public dollars to build their stuff. Why should you get public dollars to build stadiums if they're so important and they're so necessary? You build them. You being the people that own it. You got some arguments for the subsidy. Owners can collect the full value that they generate. They will increase the amount of money. In other words, we've kind of already seen this where we were looking at our winning here. So here's our percent of winning. Something that kind of looked like this, right? So here is our profit function for our teams. And we said, oh, look, profit maximization occurs at some level of winning here. We'll just call it, say, WO. But in essence, if there are positive externalities that are occurring from the team being there, the owner can't capture those externalities. If he could capture those externalities, he would. And if he could monetize those externalities, then this profit function PO here wouldn't be his real profit function. It would look different. So if he can capture these external benefits, it would look like, say, this. And he would have something that looks like that. In other words, the argument is that he's generating external benefits and he can't monetize them, so the subsidy helps to essentially compensate for that. Show that it can make sense to subsidize the owner. If the community is better off. With a subsidized team. Versus no team. So let's look at some of these structures that have been built here recently. So we got some stadiums here. These are between 2000 and 2006. So, for example, what we see here is we can see, I'm going to look at one of the ones that's the best and one of the ones that's the worst. So we've got AT&T Park here in San Francisco. This guy was built in 2000, and he had a construction cost of $350,000. No, $343 million. You had some public expenditures here. 15. And so if you look at your, say, percent public, this guy is about 4.4%. Right? Not that much. Basically, that's something that's essentially included financed by private dollars. We got some other ones here, though, built from the exact same year in Cincinnati. So this is Paul Brown Stadium. Also around 475 million. We've got 377 million in public expenditures. So here you're seeing something that is like 79.4%. So we can see here that for these stadiums, and these guys are going to vary a lot. You can see these numbers here. 84.1 for Heinz Field, Pittsburgh. 60% for Invesco Field in Denver. 86% for Ford Field in Detroit. 41% for Lincoln Field in Philadelphia. 66% for Petco Park in San Diego. And you got a whole bunch of these. You're in the hundreds, right? University of Phoenix Stadium in Phoenix, 100%. Charlotte Arena, 100% publicly financed, etc. Unfortunately, these are not the only public these are not the only public costs. So you have these infrastructure improvements. You have things that increased police and fire protection that are needed. There's roads and sewers that need to be changed. Right. I mean, you can see this right out here. This is what they're doing because there used to be an apartment complex there. Now there's not an apartment complex because Missouri State bought that up and tear that down and we put in a bunch of dorms. And those dorms can't handle the sewers and the other infrastructure that's there right now. They have to go back in and redo all that stuff. Somebody's got to pay for all of that. Some of that's paid for by the city. Some of that's paid for by Missouri State. It's the exact same thing here for these stadiums. Some of these infrastructures are paid for by the city. Some of these infrastructure improvements. Some of them are going to be paid for by the people building the park. But you've got additional costs as well that are not included. You also have, say, decreases in property taxes. So cities oftentimes don't charge stadiums and fields arenas, etc. Property taxes. So if they're not charging them property taxes and they need to collect a certain amount of revenue, what does that mean?
Increase it.
They got to increase it someplace else. So you have this shifting of tax burdens, you have this shifting of expenditures. It can make it very, very difficult to determine how much these guys are actually publicly financed, how much of them are actually privately financed. So, for example, cities sometimes share in the revenue from parking, concessions, etc. Not always. So if you include these, I mean, sometimes these might decrease the public payment. Right? We saw that some of those, for example, over here, the public payment is 79.4%. Well, if there's a contract such that, okay, the city gets the revenue from concessions and parking and a whole bunch of other things, well, maybe that decreases those amounts. Just as likely, though, we're going to see that they can be going the other way around, where the city will actually pay the stadium owners various things, or they give them certain concessions where they're actually getting monies. And so you can actually see this percent that's paid for by the public actually goes up, even though it might not all be 100% publicly financed. So you got to ask yourselves, I mean, why spend these monies? I mean, $377 million is a whole lot of money. So why do we make these types of payments? Why subsidize this stuff? Well, we have our man here, the quantity. There's our market demand. We have some level of attendance here. Let's call it, say, 81. Okay, 82. Right. But if we have markets that have external benefits, this is not true just for sports, this is true for all of them. When you're adding up demand curves for, say, pizzas, so here's person one, here's person two, and we want to add these guys up. We add these guys horizontal. So it's this plus this. So if this guy right here is, let's say, $10, and it's 12, and this is $10, and it's, say, 14, then this market demand curve here these guys are added vertically if they're private goods. But for goods that have these external benefits, for goods that are public goods, we have to add these guys vertically, not horizontal. So it's horizontal for these guys, it's going to be vertical for the ones that have these public good components to them. So for example, the quantity of national defense, so here's person one's demand. Here's person two's demand. Here's total. Right, so here you have 10 units of national defense, whatever that is, and this person's willing to pay $10. Well, once those 10 units of national defense are out there, they're available to everybody. Everyone gets the same amount of national defense, right? So if you want to calculate the total value here, you have to add vertically, not horizontally. Right, so we see that this 10th unit of national defense is actually worth $22. It's the exact same way over here, right? You have these public good components to it. And so we have our market demand curve, and then you have this demand curve of these external benefits. That could be seen down here. And remember, these are the benefits that are accruing to the people who are not going, are not paying to go to the game. But they're receiving benefits knowing that it exists. So they're getting some price here, say P1. And when we add these guys together, we get our total. So these external benefits are benefits that the owner is unable to collect, and since he can't collect them, he doesn't charge price P3, he charges price P2. But at that price P2, an attendance level, say A1, there's these external benefits that are accruing, but he can't get those benefits. And just like we see with everything, here's our quantity. Here's our price, here's the market demand, here's supply. Total, right? Where this total is market plus external benefits. He wants to be here. Q star, that's Q star. P star. But you're not there. You're here. You're at QM. And going all the way back to your principles levels classes. Quantity, price, demand, supply. Right? There's some price quantity combination that maximizes the sum of consumer and producer surplus. So here's consumer surplus. Here's producer surplus. There's some price quantity combination that makes the price the consumers are willing to pay for the next unit exactly equal to what it costs to produce the next unit. In other words, price is equal to marginal cost. But with these external benefits, we don't get here to Q star, because people can get these benefits without paying for them. So they stop, they're here at QM. So we're not here at Q star, we're here at some other point, we're here at say QM. And there is this much consumer surplus and this much producer surplus that never comes into existence. We call these guys the deadweight loss. It has these external benefits, and since people can get the benefits without paying for them, they don't. And so rather than producing Q star, you actually produce QM. And QM is inefficient. And the way that we solve that problem in things like higher education is the state helps pay for your higher education. You don't pay the full cost, right? The taxpayers pick up half to 3/4 of the cost of your education, because there is an external benefit to society from you guys being educated. It's this And they say, well, if we made students pay the full cost of what it takes for them to do education, they'd be here, they'd be at QM. But that's not the true benefits of higher education. The higher education is some of these benefits accrue to the person going to school, and some of the benefits accrue to people who are not going to school. The benefits here are actually Q star. We need Q star amount of education, not QM. So we'll subsidize it because there's these external benefits. By my definition, by being educated, I'm giving external benefits to people out there who had nothing to do with my education. And there's no way for me to monetize that. I can't collect that money. I'm just out. But I had to pay the cost of what it took to go to school. There's the deadline laws. Well, it's the same thing for sports. There's an external benefit. The question is just how big is the benefit? So, what we got here is that because of this shifting of benefits, because some people are getting the benefits without paying for them, we're going to have an altered profit function. Right? So here's, say, our attendance. Some total cost function that kind of looks like this, and we have some total revenue function. So here's our market-based total revenue function, right? And this point right here is where we see maximum profits, and that's some attendance level, say, But if we can collect, if we look at the true profit, if the owner could actually capture all of these external benefits by themselves, perhaps the tax function would look more like this. Here's the total revenue for market plus these external benefits. And now you can see things like, maybe the socially acceptable amount of attendance here is A star. That's where they should be if they can get these benefits. But they can't. So we'll subsidize them to help them get to A star. So the idea behind the subsidy is to help capture the external benefits that the owner can't get. So why not subsidize McDonald's? Because the external benefits are he's able to capture all those benefits. So we know that profit maximization occurs when marginal revenues equal to marginal cost, right? I mean, if you've had any econ classes, that should just be in your brain, right? That's not true because economists want it to be true. That's true because the laws of mathematics say that it has to be true. If profit maximization does not occur where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, then the laws of math have changed. If the laws of math have changed, the universe no longer can function. Right? I mean, it really is that way. The laws of mathematics are what run the universe. So we know that here's where we should be. AM. We're going to have some price up here, say PM. We're going to have some average cost up here. AC. I'm going to label these points. G. F. And B. So here's our team. There's some demand for sports, some marginal revenue for sports. There's some average cost to have sports, some marginal cost. All right. So let's think very, very careful about what this says. This is any other market. This is in your local McDonald's. What happens? What's happening right here? It's bringing a loss, right? Price is less than average cost. And we can actually show the size of this loss. So this team is losing some amount here. They're losing ACM, F, B, PM, right? That's the size of the loss, this box right here. So here's the size of our loss. Any other market, any other company, any other, they're making whatever, it could be whatever it is that they're making. If these conditions don't change, what happens? They go out of business, right? So it doesn't make sense for them to operate. But let's think about this in terms of a team, right? Let's assume that there's an external benefit because the demand curve here represents total benefits, right? I mean, we see here the height of the demand curve is the marginal utility people get from that. So the area under the demand curve is the total utility that people are getting. So we've got our team here charging some price PM, but the price is not high enough. It does not cover the average cost. So at this price PM, let's assume we have some amount AM here being produced. Consumer surplus is this guy here in blue at this price PM. Right? Consumers are paying PM, AM. Right? This guy right here is revenue, or expenditures. So we know that this, say, PM, B, AM, 0, right? These are consumer expenditures. This is how much people are paying. And similarly, of course, that is going to be team revenue. But team cost is higher than that, right? The team cost is this ACM, F, AM, 0, right? That's team total cost. So that we know that we have this loss here of that guy right there in red. But even there at AM, you have consumer surplus of this area A, PM, B. And so let's subsidize the team some of this. Let's give the team some of this consumer surplus. We'll give consumer surplus ACM, G, B, PM. We're just going to give them that. So we're gonna give them this area here and say blue. Alright? So we can give that to them and say, well, here's your average, we know your average cost is ACM. And we do nothing else. We only give them that amount that we've hashed. What will the team eventually do? We'll still go out of business, right? We still have this loss here. Of GFB that's not being covered. But what else is left consumer surplus wise? A, C, and G. So this is just some area, and this is just some area. So what we could do is we could give them not only area A, C, M, G, B, P, the hashed area in blue, we can also give them this hashed area in black, because that's the rest of consumer surplus. And if A, G, ACM is larger than or equal to GFB, what do we see happening?
The team will survive.
The team will stay. Consumers are happy. This is why we said even though the team might be making a loss, the team might be subsidized, it still might make sense to subsidize the team if the amount of consumer surplus is large enough to cover these losses and still have some left over. Right? If the consumer surplus AG subsidized team and team stays. If this guy here, G, ACM is less than GFB, then what do we do?
You don't subsidize.
Then there's no team. No subsidy. And since there's no subsidy, the teams are in a loss. Team leaves. Could the city of Springfield have an NFL team?
Yeah.
Yeah, even though the NFL team might make a loss, we could subsidize if the citizens of Springfield had enough consumer surplus to cover that loss. I don't think they do, which is why, for us, AGACM is less than GFB. It doesn't make sense to subsidize the NFL team. The NFL team here would make a loss. We're not going to help cover that loss. Green Bay, smaller than us. AGACM larger than GFB. It makes sense for us to subsidize the team. The consumer surplus here is larger and more than compensates for the team's loss. Subsidize the team stay. We'll pick up from here on this.